Yo, what's going on, everyone? It's been a minute since I've been talking about the older iPhones, and I'm not even talking about like the iPhone 6, the 5S even, whatever. I'm talking about a phone even older than all of those, and this is a phone that not only did I say was one of the more important iPhones ever made, it was like the most impactful iPhone ever made. Now, I said the iPhone SE was the most important one of this year, but I think this iPhone was probably the most important one ever made, and this was the iPhone 4, and I kind of want to talk about the legacy of it, what it brought to the table and how much it actually impacts how iPhones are made now and pretty much everything to it. Now, the reason this iPhone is so special and the reason it's viewed in my eyes as that is actually starts off from the predecessor of this, and that was actually the iPhone 3GS. Now, this phone, okay, it wasn't horrible, okay, it was definitely like a humongous upgrade from the first iPhone. I remember having one for a while, but the backlight didn't work. So every time I had to use it, I had to put under direct sunlight. But the iPhone 3GS was a very decent phone, but it just lacked in some key areas. It just didn't feel like a $1,000 phone, or I think it was a couple $100 less than that at the time. And it didn't really feel too premium. I mean, there were other phones out there that were still made out of plastic. It wasn't like craziness or anything like that. But one of the main complaints was definitely like the screen and the camera, this thing and that thing. So even though a lot of phones at that time weren't even that amazing, there were still a lot of punches being thrown at the iPhone 3GS just for some strange reasons. But fast forward 1 year after that, we had a complete redesign of the iPhone, in my opinion. Now, it's still the home button, still the screen, still everything, but the fact that this iPhone came out and it totally, in my eyes, should have like crazied out everybody, and I'm sure everyone was. I mean, this was a phone, I mean, think about it, the 3GS looked like the first iPhone, but the iPhone 4 looked like a completely different phone, which it was. And one of the major changes was actually the exterior of the phone, and it brought out not only a new design, it was like a rectangular shape this time, which would be carried out throughout the 4 series, 5 series, 5S, not even 5C, but a lot of phones after that, eventually the SE as well. But it also brought glass on the back, which was a super awesome thing. I mean, that made this phone feel way more premium than any other phone in the market at that time that only had plastic backs. I remember some other phones, I think an HTC Inspire, that was made out of metal, but I still think glass on the back is just one more extra nice touch. So that was a super awesome thing that this phone did, and I'll kind of talk more about that in a second. But switching off to the front again, I mean, this phone brought the Retina screen, which was crazy at the time. I mean, before, I remember using an iPhone 3GS screen, and that panel just didn't really look too good. I mean, I was probably like 14 when I owned one. I wasn't complaining too much about it because my backlight didn't work, but looking at it now, there is quite a bit of difference between them. I can tell, like, when I put them side by side, the iPhone 4's panel looks so much better than the iPhone 3GS, and I'm sure when people went to the Apple Store and they compared them, they were easily able to tell that the iPhone 4 had a much better panel than the 3GS. Nowadays, I mean, you can put like an iPhone 8 Plus panel next to like an iPhone XR panel, maybe there's a difference, maybe there's not. And the funniest thing is the iPhone XR actually has the same PPI, which is pixels per inch, on the screen as the iPhone 4, so that's kind of funny. I mean, they could have increased it a little bit on the XR, but I guess that's another reason to complain about the iPhone XR, the newer one. But I'll definitely say that the Retina screen was a humongous thing that they brought, and it really carried over to every single other iPhone that came out. Now, another crazy thing that the iPhone 4 brought was the front camera. Okay, now think about it like this. How many times do you use a front camera in a day? Probably like 40,000. I use a front camera probably twice. I realized over time I get uglier and uglier, so I don't need to take any selfies anymore. But the iPhone 4 pretty much brought the front camera to the iPhone lineup. Now, it wasn't the first phone ever to bring a front camera, but this pretty much kind of put it on the map, and I think it really spawned the movement of people putting front cameras on their phones. And think about it like this. How many times have you used a front camera? You use it all the time, and you can't even imagine, like, I couldn't imagine a phone coming out that does not have a front camera anymore. And also with the addition of the front camera, we got FaceTime as well, which allowed us to communicate way better with people and do video calls and all these different things. I'll talk more about that specific aspect of the software in a second. But like I said, this phone brought the front camera so far. It brought the super premiumness feeling, glass on the back, which honestly was weird because it was taken out on the iPhone 5 and then brought back in with the iPhone 8 series and the 10. So weird that they did that. I don't really know why they did that. They should have just kept it on all the phones after, because in my opinion, when I hold an iPhone 4 and I hold it like an iPhone 6, for example, I can definitely feel that the 4 feels more premium than the iPhone 6. I mean, I like the 6 because it's bigger, and I like a bigger phone than a smaller phone, but the iPhone 4 definitely is kind of in a unique situation and, should really be brought into a pedestal in that sense. Now, Another thing that the iPhone 4 brought, and really the legacy of it, is it brought the micro SIM card. So before, phones like the 3GS and all those phones before used the regular standard SIM card size, but then this phone brought the micro SIM, which I don't really know why they do it. I think it's like to save space inside their phone. And at the time I was super mad because like I didn't have a micro SIM and I always had to like cut my own SIM card down, and like if I messed up then my mom would kill me because we would have to go to the store and get a new one. But luckily I never messed it up. But I'll definitely say that at the time, I think a lot of people complained, but that really sparked the movement of more phones really making the SIM card smaller, which, you know, it does have some benefits. There's more size in the phone and more space in the phone to do other things with. Now, micro SIM is different than nano SIM. Nano SIMs are a little bit smaller, and a lot of phones have since moved to nano SIMs, but so at least for this phone brought micro SIMs to iPhone, so that's pretty cool. Now, going on with the legacy of it, this really has not so much to do with the iPhone itself, none of the features, but more so of like the impact that it had on Apple as a company. Now, not only did the iPhone, you know, bring a lot of money and everything to Apple, obviously, but it also brought a lot of drama and problems. And I'll actually talk more about the specific problems that the iPhone 4 brought in a different video because I feel like a lot of people forgot about it. But pretty much to kind of sum it up, there were a lot of prototypes that were leaked to the public, and it was totally by accident. They were actual models. You know, some people now, they like me included, we make renders and things that we might think are going to happen, and people take photos and stuff, but these were actual iPhone 4s or potential iPhone 4s that were just mishandled and they got lost or someone bought them by accident. And that kind of showed that Apple was, you know, kind of weak in the security sense of it. So Apple since then really did not want something like this happening again. They don't want their competitors having access to a phone that they haven't even released yet. So Apple really since then strengthened their security and made sure that the devices don't get leaked out and they don't get lost or mishandled and brought out to the public. So going on with the legacy of it, like I said, this phone had a humongous impact on the security of Apple. Now this next one is a little bit indirect, but this phone was released with iOS 4. With that, it brought one humongous thing, which is FaceTime. Okay, that's a crazy thing. How many times do we FaceTime people every day? Probably a lot. But another thing that iOS 4 brought was actually multitasking. So imagine how many times you guys multitask in a day. I mean, I probably did it while making this video, you know? So iOS 4 brought that, which is pretty crazy. So like I said, iOS 4 brought a lot of other things too. But like I said, the iPhone 4 came out with iOS 4. So that's pretty crazy. And that's another part of the legacy, keeping that legacy going. Now, another funny thing, and this is kind of to wrap everything up, and this isn't funny, this is like very, very serious and very, very cool that the iPhone 4 was kind of able to partake in this. The iPhone 4 actually had the longest life of production of any iPhone ever made. So think about it like this, all those iPhone 6s, the 6Ss, 8s, 10s, 10s so far, all those iPhones technically had a shorter lifespan in terms of production than the iPhone 4. So I'm not talking about iOS updates, I'm pretty much talking about how long they were sold in the Apple Store, or other stores for that matter. So you could easily have gone, I think they stopped making them in like 2013, which is pretty insane. So you could have, from the date it was released to 2013, you could have easily went into the Apple Store, picked one of them up until 2013. So that's pretty crazy. And that's really just the legacy of the iPhone 4. It's a crazy phone. I think it brought a lot to the table. And like I said, I think it's one of the most important iPhones ever made, not even just of this year, but just overall in general. And I think the iPhone 4S was definitely an improvement, but I don't think it had the amount of impact as the iPhone 4 did. And now some people might say, well, the iPhone 10, you know, completely changed the design and it brought so much stuff to the table, this and that. I think it did. Most of the companies already were kind of moving in that trend of like bezel-less designs and things like that. And I feel like Touch ID, you know, the removal of it, the removal of the headphone jack, this thing, that thing, it's just kind of like, what's the point of even upgrading to it? It's kind of like a downgrade. Whereas on the iPhone 4, it was like a proper upgrade. Not only did the phone get faster and this and that, but it also became way better in terms of just the feeling of the phone, the hardware, the outside of how it looked like. It went from looking like a $40 phone to like a $500 phone in terms of like one generation upgrade, which is crazy. And some people, like I said, might say, well, if you go from an iPhone 6S to an iPhone 10, there's also like a crazy difference there. But honestly, I think the legacy of the iPhone 4 still carries on. And I think it's kind of cool to look back and see, you know, a lot of iPhones were made, but not a lot of iPhones had an impact like the iPhone 4 did. And that is pretty much where I'm going to leave it at. Let me know what you guys think, though. Do you guys think the iPhone 4's legacy is really important, or do you think there's another iPhone out there that's even better than the iPhone 4 in terms of the legacy of it? Obviously, the first iPhone probably is the most important, but I want to know what you guys think. So leave some comments down there. I'm definitely going to read them. But hit that like button. That'll mean so much. But definitely hit that subscribe button. Every single subscriber we get really does count. You guys have no idea. I literally like wake up in the morning and I just hope that I get subscribers. No, I'm just kidding, but trying to grow this family out, trying to get to 100 by the end of this year. So if you guys could hit that subscribe button, that'll mean so much. And I mentioned this in another video, but I'm just going to say it here now too. I'm planning on doing a giveaway. I think the video is going to be dropped tomorrow or the day after, but pretty much in December, I'm going to try to give away an iPhone every week. So the whole month, I'm just going to be giving away iPhones. So keep it locked down on the channel, hit that subscribe button, and follow me on Twitter and Instagram so you don't miss those. But yeah, the Twitter and Instagram links are down below, but please subscribe to my second channel as well. That is also linked down below. It would mean so much if you guys could subscribe to that. But more importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.